The situational approach has been refined and revised several times since its inception. The premise of the theory is that different situations demand different kinds of leadership. The situational approach is illustrated in the model developed by Blanchard and his colleagues called the Situational Leadership II model, or SL2 model. The situational approach stresses that leadership is composed of both a directive and a supportive dimension, and that each can be applied appropriately in a given situation. Effective leaders are those who can recognize what followers need and then adapt their own style to meet those needs. The dynamics of this approach are clearly illustrated in the SL2 model, which compares two major dimensions: leadership style and different levels of followers. Leadership style consists of the behavior pattern of a person who attempts to influence others. It includes both directive behaviors and supportive behaviors. Directive behaviors help group members accomplish goals by giving directions, establishing goals and methods of evaluation, setting timelines, defining roles, and showing how goals are to be achieved. Supportive behaviors help group members feel comfortable about themselves, their coworkers, and the situation. Leadership styles can be classified further into four distinct categories of directive and supportive behaviors. The first style, S1, is a high directive, low supportive style, which is also called a directing style. A second style, S2, is called a coaching approach and has a high directive, high supportive style. A third style, S3, is a supporting approach that requires the leader to take a high supportive, low directive style. The last, fourth style, S4, is called the low supportive, low directive style, or the delegating approach. A second major part of the model concerns the development of followers. Followers are at a high development level if they're interested and confident in their work and know how to achieve a goal. They have the skills to do the job and the motivation to get it done. The situational approach is constructed around the idea that followers move forward and backward along a developmental continuum. For leaders to be effective, it is essential that they determine where followers are on the developmental continuum and adapt their leadership styles to directly match their followers' developmental needs. In a given situation, the first task for a leader is to determine the nature of the situation. For each level of development, there's a specific style of leadership that the leader should adapt. Followers can move back and forth along the developmental continuum, requiring leaders to be flexible in their leadership behavior. With the growing cross-cultural and technical influences in our society, it appears that the need for leaders to be flexible in their leadership style is increasingly important. Successful leaders use relation orientation as a base, but include along with it a structure orientation and a change orientation. Because the situational leadership approach has several strengths, particularly for practitioners. It's perceived by corporations as offering a useful model for training people to become effective leaders. Because it's described as an abstract level that is easily grasped, the ideas behind the approach are quickly acquired. Whereas many theories of leadership are descriptive in nature, the situational approach is prescriptive. It tells you what you should and should not do in various contexts. The approach stresses that leaders need to find out about their followers' needs and then adapt their leadership style accordingly. Overall, this approach underscores that followers have unique needs and deserve our help in trying to become better at doing their work. Despite its history of use in leadership training and development, situational leadership has several limitations. The first criticism of situational leadership is that only a few research studies have been conducted to justify the assumptions and propositions set forth in the approach. A second criticism that can be directed at the situational approach concerns the ambiguous conceptualization in the model of followers' developmental needs. The authors of situational leadership do not explain the theoretical basis for the changes in the composition of each of the developmental levels. The argument provided by Blanchard for how commitment varies in situational leadership model is that followers usually start out motivated and eager to learn and then may become discouraged and disillusioned along the journey. Without more research findings to substantiate the way follower commitment is conceptualized, this dimension of situational leadership remains unclear. A fourth criticism of the situational approach has to do with how the model matches leadership style with follower development levels, the prescriptions of the model itself. A fifth criticism of situational leadership is that it fails to account for certain demographic characteristics like education, experience, age, and gender in influencing the leader-follower prescriptions of the model. Situational leadership can also be criticized from a practical standpoint because it doesn't fully address the issue of one-to-one versus group leadership in an organized setting. A final criticism of situational leadership can be directed at the leadership questionnaires that accompany the model. The straightforward nature of situational leadership makes it practical for managers to use. The principles of this approach can be applied at many different levels of an organization. Because situational leadership stresses adapting to followers, it's ideal for use with followers whose commitment and competence change over the course of a project. It's an encompassing model with a wide range of applications. Situational leadership is a prescriptive approach to leadership. It suggests how leaders can become more effective in many different types of organizational settings. This approach provides a model that suggests to leaders how they should behave based on the demands of a particular situation. Situational leadership classifies leadership into 4 styles. Effective leadership occurs when the leader can accurately diagnose the development level of followers in a goal situation and can then exhibit the prescribed leadership style that matches that situation. Leadership is measured in this approach with questionnaires that ask respondents to assess a series of work-related situations. There are 4 major strengths to the situational approach. First, it's recognized by many as a standard for training leaders. Unlike many other leadership theories, this approach does not have a strong body of research findings to justify and support the theoretical underpinnings on which it stands. Finally, the model does not provide guidelines for how leaders can use this approach in group settings as opposed to one-on-one contexts.